Alright, welcome back. This is part 2 of changing front disc brakes. What I did was I pounded on this, continued rotating it, and going from different directions. It still wouldn't come off, so what I ended up having to do is reach in behind the rotor itself and smack from the back side forward a couple of times, and now it broke loose. Right here, you have your wheel hub. And you can see how very rusted on that was, and that just created just an oxidization weld onto the vehicle itself. And you can see how worn these rotors are. You have the big groove back here, and the slots that were at one time on this rotor are completely gone. That's completely gone. And that's the front end of the slots. How this is worn down here. These are the hammer impacts from me striking it with the hammer to get it to break free. Which, if I damage this rotor, no big deal, because I'm just going to end up turning it into a scrapyard for metal anyway. Now we got your new rotor. If I haven't said before, I'm upgrading to power stop. These are not just slotted, but these are also drilled. Drilling helps keep the rotor cool, keep it from warping. The slots themselves increase, put a little gap so that when the pad presses against the rotor itself, it allows gases to escape. It also acts like a small razor blade to slice glazing, which is what heats up. It kind of creates like a glass-like substance. So it slices that glass-like substance so it's always the pad that's in contact and not that glazing on the rotor to increase your stopping power and performance. When you're installing these rotors, most of them come with a direction or a directional marker, or we'll actually tell you which side they go on. This goes on the front passenger side, which we are currently working on. If it doesn't come with any type of marker, remember when you install it, the slash should be pointing towards the back end. When on the left side of the wheel, it should always be pointing towards the back end. So what we want to do now is just throw it back onto the hub and let it sit there. Now we can continue on and reinstall our pads. Again, these are the Power Stop Z16 pads. I'm just going to take them and slide them in. Make sure you're sliding them in the correct direction. My punch pins go inside here. For other vehicles that use clips, you'll see that there is an arc on one side and at the bottom, so it sort of looks like a rainbow shape. So make sure that the rainbow shapes are matching up, that way you don't have them cross. If it doesn't fit, you're probably putting it in the wrong way, so try it on the other side or try to flip it around. So we just slide our pads in, make sure our holes are aligned. On either side. We'll want to grab our roll pins and the big holes in the back to the front. I'll feed those in. So I feed the first one in, but not all the way in. Make sure that my holes are aligned. But not push it in all the way. Because our next step is to reinstall the clip. Hooking it down and pushing it in right there. And we're going to insert our second pin. Depress your clip down. And feed your pin the rest of the way in. And you just want to grab your hammer, tap them in. And that beveled point on the front of these clips will help guide it into the hole. Once you have them down fairly well, again grab your punch. And repunch them until they are pretty much flush. we're even with the edge. And when I look into the front end, I can see my punch pins are all the way through. And my back ones are just about flush, which means they're all the way in and properly seated. All I have to do is take my caliper with my brake pads, slide it over top of my rotor, and align the back end of the caliper on the back end with one of the bolts that go in. Insert one bolt, tighten it down, but make sure there's still a little bit of play. That way you can switch over and go hands-free to your second bolt, which will then come in to the bottom side. And that's why you need it hands-free, so I can continue to wiggle this around to get the holes to align and start to feed it through. Once I have this through, I'm going to torque those back down with my wrench. Again, this is loosening. You switch it to tightening. Back onto my wrench. And tighten this the whole way back down. Now, as you'll see, there's still a little bit of play in the rotor. You don't have to worry about that, because once we put the wheel back on, the lugs are going to push down on here and essentially do that and push that in tight. And this is also very, very loose right now, because you press those pistons back into this caliper. So when you first start your vehicle, pump your brakes a few times until it grabs. You'll feel it grab tight. And that's when you know that the brake is reset back onto the rotor itself. Now, if while you're pumping your brake, it continues to pump and you don't really feel anything, or it feels spongy, then you're going to have to go through and bleed your brakes. To bleed your brakes, you're going to come back into your vehicle, and then back up top here, it's going to be a two-person job. You're going to remove your brake cap end here and loosen up on this nut. Have somebody inside the vehicle depress the brake all the way to the floor, and then as you watch it, watch for air. When you see a steady stream come out of this end right here, when you see a steady stream come out, that means that there's no more air. If it's still sputtering or spattering when you're pumping the brakes, as you do that, that means you still have air in the system. But what you're going to want to do is loosen, tell them to push the brake to the floor, they push it to the floor, tighten, tell them to release it. Loosen, tell them to push it to the floor, tighten, tell them to release it. And you continue that until you get a steady stream. Once you have a steady stream, they hold it to the floor, you tighten it back up, your brakes are now bled, pump your brakes a few times, the sponge feeling should be gone. Now we'll work on reinstalling our tire. Grab it, line it onto your studs. I like to use my knees to actually push it on, that way my arms are on the tire itself. Once it's on there, make sure it's held in place until you at least get one nut threaded on partially. Once you have a nut threaded on partially, thread on the remainder of your nuts. Once your nuts are on, get your lug wrench or your air tool, and you're going to torque them down. And when you torque them down, you want to use a cross-level pattern. So whatever bolt you do, you want to do the one immediately or as close to as cross as possible, so that the wheel doesn't get offset when you're torquing it down. So we're going to start off here. Torque this down. Now I don't want to make it overly tight, but I just want it tight enough that I can feel that it's snug. It's snug. I'm going to go in close to as across as possible, which is going to be this one right here. I'm going to torque this one down. And just snug. Again, as close to as across as possible. Spin that down, and then again across. What I did is I used my forearm to keep the tire from spinning. If you remember in the beginning, I told you to break them free, because this is what happens if you don't break them free when you're trying to do your tire. It just free spins like that. That's why you want to break them down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach up underneath, remove my jack stand. I'm going to lower my vehicle, and then I'm going to finish torquing these. When you're lowering your vehicle, make sure all arms, legs, feet, children, toys, and everything are clear of the vehicle, and lower your vehicle. I explained bleeding the brake earlier in the video, but I didn't actually bleed the brake, because once you're changing these, if you don't have any air or you didn't allow any air into the system, you shouldn't have to bleed your brakes at all. They should already be set. So once I start this up, I will test it out. And if while I step on the brake I feel that it's spongy, I'm just going to raise it up, take the tire back off, and then re-bleed it. But for purposes of shortening this video, I did not bleed the brakes. Nor do you have to bleed the brakes every time that you do a brake change. Again, now it's time to torque them down. You don't want to make them overly tight, because then you could end up with rust weld problems and trying to get the nuts off. You could also strip your studs. So just a good twist. Of course, the best way to do this, if you have the financial means, is to have an actual torque wrench that when you twist, it'll click when it hits the appropriate torque, and torquing it to the appropriate foot-pounds as recommended in the owner's manual. As you can see again, I'm still using the same pattern going across. And now my brakes are essentially finished. So you can have a look at the finished product once you're up and done. And then when you're completed with that, you want to come back over and you're going to want to check your brake reservoir. And it just like happened with wear and tear and my brakes running down, I kept on adding fluid to keep it between the min and max. But now that I've pushed the pistons back inside, you can see I take off the cap and it's well past over full. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up the vehicle. I'm going to pump the brakes to get some fluid back into those calipers and get those pistons to expand. And if it doesn't take it to the max line, then I'm going to use a vampire or a suction tool to suck out the excess brake fluid because you don't want it overfull. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Click like, please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll have more posted soon. Look for me to post how to do rear brakes next, as I got the whole kit. Thank you.